this is purely based off of my observations, but there are two different ways in which people approach social structures. I think that it's important to be able to discuss this and like identify where you stand and also identify where other people stand, so that whenever you find that you're quietly being rejected from being integrated into a group, or whenever you find that you don't feel the greatest sense of belonging, you know why, okay? Like, you don't let it affect your self-worth. You know why. I think it's important to acknowledge this because from my observations, you know, a lack of connection and a lack of that sense of belonging often boils down to misalignment between the way that you approach social structures and the way that this group approaches social structures, right? So, yeah. So the first category that I wanted to talk about is breadth-oriented people. So breadth-oriented, should I just go ahead and say the categories? Yeah, breadth versus depth, okay? So breadth-oriented people, they feel the greatest sense of belonging when they can look around the room and see that so many people enjoy their presence, right? Breadth-oriented people opt for consistency. They choose to surround themselves with people who they know will show up. And consistency also in terms of emotional consistency. Is this person going to maintain the lightheartedness and the easygoing vibes of the room whenever they're there, right? And for breadth-oriented people, it doesn't take much for them to consider you a friend. All you have to do is show up. Now, what makes them uncomfortable, right? And admittedly, this is like a lesson that I am embarrassed to admit I had to learn, but not many people like having conversations where it requires self-reflection at some point, right? Like, what are your dreams? Like, what passions do you have? Like, what's your career path? Or what's your biggest fear? Or, you know, questions like that. Some people, I think most people, especially in college, it probably changes as we age. I wouldn't know, I'm in college right now, but most people haven't had the time or capacity to self-reflect. And sometimes, most oftentimes, they don't feel the need to, right? And so when you ask a question to them like this, as a depth-oriented person, you're asking a breadth-oriented person, self-reflective questions, it can make them a little uncomfortable when they don't know the answer because they haven't thought about that before, right? So subconsciously, that breadth-oriented person, their nervous system doesn't feel that sense of safety that they crave, and that they get from other breadth-oriented people, and so they will quietly reject you and like stop asking to hang out or stop including you. And you know, it says nothing about you, right? Like it's nothing about you. It's about them and them regulating their sense of self, right? On the other side of the spectrum, we have the depth-oriented person. I can say that I myself am depth-oriented. With depth-oriented people, it's a little more difficult for you to consider people as friends, because in order for you to consider someone a friend, you need to say that they know you inside and out and you know them inside and out, right? Conversations about like, what are your future dreams, what are your passions, you know, those help you to feel more connected with the person sitting across from you, right? So yeah, the mismatch happens when a depth-oriented person tries to integrate themselves into a breadth-oriented group, and because they enter this scene trying to look for long-term connections and friendships, right? It's, you know, they bring these deep questions, and breadth-oriented people often struggle to answer them, right? Over time, you'll find yourself being slowly exited from the group. So again, it's important to recognize that this has nothing to do with you and your self-worth, and it has nothing to do with them not liking you as a person. It's just them trying to protect themselves. Another way, if a breadth-oriented person were to try to integrate themselves into your group, your depth-oriented group, they would probably feel a similar sense of a lack of belongingness, like they don't belong in the scene because you guys are talking about these meaningful questions and having these meaningful conversations, and they haven't had the time to self-reflect and haven't had the time and opportunity to self-reflect, and so they feel that they can't bring much to the table, and maybe it's even a little overwhelming for them. And yeah, so on top of that, I do want to point out that neither category is superior to the other. There's no category that is inherently better than the other. And I feel the need to point that out because we're just different people. Like, okay, like it just boils down to incompatibility. You're just incompatible with each other. Yeah, don't let it affect you personally. Once you notice that happening, just quietly exit the scene, let it happen, and choose to reinvest your energy into people who value you. Because as a depth-oriented person, and I'm just speaking for depth-oriented people because that's my experience, but as a depth-oriented person, some people would love to have you get to know them and would love to be seen by you in the same way that they would love to get to know and see you. Okay, so just reinvest your energy into other places, and yeah, I know who needed to hear that, but I hope that helps someone out there.